My background is general practice, but I've been a full-time aesthetic physician for the last 10 years. And we have Riverbanks, which is based in Harpenden in Hertfordshire, and also a branch in London. And my practice really was built on aesthetic injectables to start off with. Pretty much your typical anti-wrinkle treatments, and also I had a practice built on Vaser lipo. And I wondered really, why should I look at non-invasive fat reduction? Because we were doing really well with our liposuction side of our practice. And one of the reasons was we saw that many of our patients didn't realize that Vaser was still an invasive procedure. So they come into and they're not wanting to have a surgical procedure. And also many people don't want anything surgical. They only want to have a non-invasive procedure. But what's also was interesting for me is that this technique, Coolsculpting, can be a therapist-led service. The physician does not need to get involved, clinician does not need to be involved. So this meant my practice could grow without me having to be there. All right? And also, this was a very interesting fact. Celtic did some research, market research, and they identified that the market for people considering non-invasive fat reduction is almost twice that of the injectable market. And if you think of everyone here who goes into aesthetics first, they go into injectables first. The market for non-invasive fat reduction is twice the size. All right? And if you talk about it, people over the dinner table always talk about a bulge here or there, but they don't talk about their lines and wrinkles. Okay, so that's an interesting stat and very, very worth it, and it's true. We've seen that. So my initial cryolipolysis experience was that I saw there was a need. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. So there was a need because we were losing patients to our lipo practice. Right? I first opted for a copycat system because I felt that all of the technologies were the same. All you're doing is freezing fat. All right? It was less investment, and therefore it was less business risk to me if it didn't work. I knew I could fix them with lipo. There were some good results, but what I did notice, there was a lot of inconsistent results, and I couldn't explain why. Sometimes the patient would get good results and other times they wouldn't. And I'm not used to that, because with my lipo practice I would find that everyone would get a good result unless they ate a lot of chips, you know, or I caused a deformity, you know. It was a good profit for sure, but you know, at the end of the day, it was that inconsistency that was key. And why was that? Very limited clinical research. I didn't realize how important that was at that stage, all right? Very limited, if any, training, all right? And also very limited indications which had been proven. Not that, yes, we can do it, they had been tested and proven. Customer support was very small, and there was no brand awareness. When I Googled our product, I came up with air conditioning units, okay? Whereas if you Google Coolsculpting, it's all over the place. You get videos, images, full pages, blogs, everything. And most of it is very, very good. You know, 87, 90% of it is very, very positive. So as I said, let's recap. Inconsistent results. And one of the reasons for those inconsistent results was the inconsistent cooling temperature. And this was proven, okay? I got my machines analyzed. And what we saw, that there was a big difference between one applicator's cooling temperature and the other applicator's cooling temperature. There was two applicators. So that is why we weren't getting consistent results. The machine was not flagging up a fault in any way whatsoever. So it's not checking its temperatures. The other thing which it doesn't do, it doesn't detect for a freeze. And that's one of the things with cryo, it doesn't detect for a freeze. What we did here, we put in a freeze. We simulated a freeze contact. And what happened with the other machine? It carried on freezing the tissue right to the end of the cycle. It did not stop. So therefore that would result in a clinical burn. Coolsculpt, on the other hand, we bring in a freeze here, okay, minus 10 degrees, boom, cuts out, the temperature goes back to normal. So the machine cuts out as soon as there's a freeze detected. And that's unique to the Coolsculpting, so your safety mechanism is built in. That gives you safer, more consistent results and a reduced risk of complications. So how did I get there? Why did I choose Coolsculpting? Clearly there was the safety, there's the research, but also I wanted to associate my brand with the best brands. We all many of us here in aesthetics like to wear the best brands, have the best brands, okay? Same for your clinic. If you want your clinic to be associated as being one of the best and your patients go to you, they want to see you associated with the best brands as well. All right? And Coolsculpting was clearly that for me, and it has had a big impact. Otherwise, if they see you going for cheaper copycats, they'll assume your prices are cheap and you negotiate cheap and they realize you're second rate. So what do you want to associate yourself with? 75 peer-reviewed papers, 5 million treatments worldwide, and the technology in it, I'll come up with how the results are even more secure. There's intelligent technology and durable, reproducible results with long-term duration. As you know, these results are permanent results. And it's the only cryolipolysis device to be FDA approved for 8 indications, and the only one for chin, submental area. So let's talk about this Cool Control intelligent technology. How do we get consistent results? On each applicator, there are 6 sensors, a series of sensors on each side of the applicator, which are constantly monitoring the temperature of the tissue. If the tissue is too warm, it cools a bit more. If the tissue is too cold, it backs off a bit. Just like active suspension in a car, where the car is constantly maintained at the right height, or your hive control systems, your thermostat, it backs off the radiator if it's too hot or cold. It's constantly monitoring. Not one of the other cryolipolysis machines has that. So you have got unique, safe, and highly intelligent feedback mechanism going on. This is my setup in my practice. We have a dedicated Coolsculpting suite. We have dual sculpting in place, so we can even speed up the treatment times for our patients even more. The Cool Advantage treatments give only a 35-minute cycle time. And there's a Coolsculpting University, which Celtic offer, which is an outstanding training program for your clients, for your therapists. And even I attended that. From a business point of view, Coolsculpting has 10 times more market share than any of the other competitors put together. Okay, so straight away you're not having to really educate your patients about this. Just by having you associated with the brand, you're putting your practice out there. Your patients will go and Google it, as they do with every treatment you recommend them. They'll go and Google it, and then they'll come back to you. Whereas beforehand, they'd Google it, and then they'd go and do a bit more research, and then go probably somewhere else. All right? For me, though, one of the biggest sellers is the practice development manager. Unlike with injectable companies, the practice development manager here really is there to transform your practice. It is that business development manager you've wanted. Okay, but they are focused purely on your Coolsculpting practice. Okay, they are there to not only do they train your staff, okay, not only they do the marketing for you, they produce leaflets for you, they coordinate and host the whole open evenings. I do not get involved in any of that. Whereas beforehand, it's a headache to organise those. They do it all for you. They want your involvement if you want to input, but they're happy to do it all. They look after the staff, they're constantly on the phone, they're the first port of call for the staff, which sometimes I want to be the first port of call, but no, they sometimes go straight to them. They're open for that. It's tremendous, the support. It's something which I've never experienced before in aesthetics, ever. And that's what you're paying for as well. You're paying for it. And so you've got almost like a 1/5, a 20% person coming to you 1 day a week, 1 day a month, depending on your level of requirements you need. It's significant. In the beginning, you require more support, and then as you get further on, you need less support. And then there's the data they provide, which is the Cool Connect reports, which come through the system. I found out through that 39% of my Coolsculpt patients were new to my practice. That's great for practice patient growth, but also 61% were from my own database. And that's me despite having other cryo beforehand. Okay? Because brand awareness is such a big key factor here. 20% of the new patients were male, so it's opening up the male market to you. So therefore you can introduce your other male treatments. You can treat virtually any part of the body. All right, these are the areas we're doing. Typically abs and flanks are the key area, but also there's arms, back, chin, inner thighs, outer thighs. With our previous system, people only really wanted to look at the lower abdomen, and they'd have 1 cycle. We've got Coolsculpt straight away. The average cycle per patient went up to 5. And that's from the patients understanding what Coolsculpting is about. So they realise that because there's so much more information out there for them. And those are the testimonials. And finally, I just want to show you some of our examples. You can see a big change in 6 months. It takes 3 to 4 months to see results, but again, this is a nice lipo result for someone, but she hasn't had surgery. All right? This is a nice flattening of the patient just 2 months later. Again, 4 cycles applied, outer thighs, it's a nice trimming of the bulge. Lower abdomen, she needs her upper abdomen done, of course, but sometimes budget restricts people and they'll do it in stages. Upper arms, not as good as a brachioplasty, but there is no scar. Okay? Maybe not quite as good as liposuction, but again, she had a bit of skin laxity. So it's a nice, and she's very happy. How do I know the patient's happy? She now wears sleeveless dresses. Okay? That's all they want, these patients. They don't want sometimes the results that we know we can deliver with other treatments we offer. I can sometimes give them a cracking abdomen with some Vaser, or I can strain that out completely with they don't want that. Not everybody wants perfection. They want improvements. Okay? Likewise here. Could I have got a better result with Vaser lipo? Yes. Was she happy? Yes. Could she have another round? Yes. It's up to her. There's no downtime here. This was probably a treatment over an hour and a half. She's watching Netflix on telly in the treatment room, and she drives home and then waits. So there's a big difference. And our patients have spontaneously written reviews for us. Real Self is something, if you're not engaged in, you should be looking at. I know that Zeltique are going to be working with Real Self to help promote Coolsculpting through consumers, because Zeltique has Coolsculpt has a massive rating on there. It's the most popular non-invasive fat reduction system on Real Self. And what do my patients do when they're looking at any of my treatments? They go there. I go there to check for treatments to see what patients are looking at.